my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Squad. Now, today's video has been voted in by our Patreon members. Hey guys, thanks a million. It's all about an infamous battle, the Battle of Evesham, fought on the 4th of August, 1265. It's in the Midlands of England. And it involves Simon de Montfort, the 6th Earl of Leicester, and Henry III. The battle would cost Simon de Montfort his life and is often referred to as the murder of Evesham. So let's have a little look what led up to this most terrible battle. So, Battle of Evesham. Pinnacle, high point if you want to call it that, I wouldn't, of the Second Barons' War. Now, the Second Barons' War, you've got to go back 200 years and see what's been happening in England's history, including William the Conqueror and Henry III, the king involved in this Second Barons' War. That's 8 separate kings. Basically, it's the French influence, the overwhelming French influence on the nobility of England. King John, who inherited a bankrupt throne from his brother Richard, he loses his lands, his holdings in France. This leads to that First Barons' War, the one with the Magna Carta and William Marshall. What a story. Future film, stand by. But it's his son, Henry III, who should have learned from his father's mistakes. But no, he, in turn, loses more land in France. He, in turn, brings his French favourites over, the Poitevins, and also his favourites from Savoy in northern Italy in the Alps there. He brings them to positions over the noblemen, over the barons, puts them in high positions in church. He just doesn't understand what he's doing to the nobility of England. So Simon de Montfort, what a guy. However, French father, raised in France, spoke French, gave up his French lands and entitlements, coming to England for an English inheritance. He was a favourite of Henry III. In fact, he was so much of a favourite, he married the king's sister, Eleanor. They were brother-in-laws. Now, Simon de Montfort fell out of favour with the king. I suppose it could easily be done in those days. And he embarked upon the Barons' Crusade to the Holy Land. But he returned in 1241 to assist Henry III on his expedition into France to reclaim lost family land in Poitou in France. It was a disaster. It was a debacle. And it was pretty much down to Henry III. Henry III, what a reckless king. Uncontrollable spending. His preference of foreign dignitaries and churchmen being brought into England. This is what sowed the seeds of discontent between him and his barons. And by 1254, Simon de Montfort is at the head of opposition in government with the barons against the king. This led to the Mad Parliament, and in 1258, the king ratifies the provisions of Oxford, which hands over rights to the barons. One of the things is Parliament will meet 3 times a year. And it initially was successful. But unfortunately, the king reneged on this agreement. And by 1263, the first battles of the Second Barons' War have already begun. Now, I promise we'll get to the Battle of Evesham, but you can't talk about the Battle of Evesham without first mentioning the Battle of Lewes. Lewes, in East Sussex, in the south of England, there was a battle there, 14th of May, 1264, just over a year before the Battle of Evesham. This is important because it was here that Simon de Montfort's forces could have surprised the king's army whilst they were still in their beds. But instead, the rebel army, Simon de Montfort and his barons, they stand off. They will not attack. They will wait on the top of the hill just outside of Lewes. They wait for the king's army to come up the hill, because to attack them in their beds would be wrong. The chivalry involved there. Instead, they will let the king gather his forces and tire themselves as they climb the hill to meet Simon de Montfort's forces. Now, I've made a model and I'm going to explain what happened at the Battle of Lewes. Right, so before we actually get into the battle, These figures are from my 100 Years' War and some of them from the War of the Roses. I've just got no figures from the Barons' War, so just accept the fact that they're in the wrong armour. You see, the armour they had in those days, if you could afford it, was mail, what people call chain mail from mesh, a gambeson, padding. They would have elbow pads and knee pads. You don't want an arrow to the knee, do you? And a great helm. Now I've got one here and I'm going to put it up. Right, so the great helm they had. Now I'm going to put this on so you can see how it works. Now you would have a padded coif over your head. Then you would bring up your mail. So bear with me. This is where you need a squire. And also you need to make all this big enough so you can put the padding underneath. Big mistake. But now I'll put the great helm on. Now, I don't know if you can hear me, but I can see you. I've got quite good vision. I can move all the way around. So this isn't too bad and not too heavy. I'm going to take it off now. But I tell you this, if somebody hit you the back of the head with a hammer, you put a steel bucket on your head and try it out, because I guarantee it would hurt, but it might not kill you. But if somebody stuck a dagger through the eye slits, that might just do the job. So these armies of the Second Barons' War, but they were not the armies of the 100 Years' War. There were no massed ranks of English and Welsh bowmen here. It simply hadn't developed. Now amongst the foot soldiers there were bowmen, there were crossbowmen, but it appears they were intermingled, so they wouldn't have these massed volleys of arrows. That was to develop later. So your mounted man, he would, of course, have his sword. And I have my trusty single-handed blade. It's a good sword, this. If we sharpen it up, I know it would take a razor edge. But have a look at this lance point here. This is actually, it is razor sharp. And I guarantee this would go right through a body. I would like to demonstrate this, but I'm not allowed. So, clubs, sickles, scythes, bill hooks, the whole lot, hammers, that would be the weapons of your foot soldiers. So let's now get into this battle. Battle of Lewes, 14th of May, 1264. Now it's my model. It's only a representation of the amount of men that were on the field. I only have a few hundred, not thousands upon thousands, so just bear with me. The way it was, cavalry in the front, infantry behind. And the way this battle opened up is the rebel forces are all on the top of the hill. Here we have Simon de Montfort in the reserve battalion. But in the front centre here is Gilbert de Clare. There's his coat of arms. That's what I've put it there. This is important to note. Now in the royalist forces, on the left flank you have the king himself, Henry III of England, not the best soldier in the world. Then you have in the centre his brother, Richard, Earl of Cornwall. He's quite a tough guy. But on the far side here, that's Lord Edward, the king's son. In fact, he would become King Edward I. It's Longshanks himself. Now what happens here is quite something, because as they approach, before the rebels can attack down the hill, Lord Edward charges the left flank of the rebel army. These are made up of a London army, and Edward hates them because they have insulted the name of his mother. So whilst Edward pursues the Londoners off the battlefield and chases them away, what happens next is decisive. But before I can actually continue, I need to rearrange some of the figures. So as you can see now that Lord Edward has actually chased off the Londoners, it leaves the right flank of the king's army totally exposed. And de Montfort, at the top of the hill here, has an entire division that he is going to bring around, and he's going to hit the king's army from the side, from the flank. So what happens is this is just the point of impact, literally as it's about to smash together. So here you have Gilbert de Clare, most important coat of arms in both the Battle of Lewes and later Evesham. So he smashes forward, smashes into the centre of the king's army here. The Earl of Cornwall ends up being isolated and captured at a nearby windmill. Another story in its own right. The king's own division is ploughed into, but it's what happens all the way around. Simon de Montfort brings his division around, smashes into the flank and starts to come up behind the king's army. They are going to be surrounded. It's over very quickly. The king's men, they retreat back into Lewes. The king himself ends up at the priory, but then later on, Edward, Lord Edward, returns to the battlefield, sees that it's all over, the barons are victorious, and he then goes into the priory with his father where he is captured. So both the king, Henry III of England, and his son Edward, they're captured. This ends up with what's called the Mise of Lewes, which is basically a transfer of power from Henry III to Simon de Montfort. Now, Simon de Montfort, with his victory at Lewes, allowed him to install the first constitutional monarchy of England. He ran the country with a council and parliament for the best part of a year. To me, that's wow. You just think about that. This is the first constitutional monarchy where the council and parliament ruled with the king in the background, just the way it's run in England or in Britain today. But just a year later, Henry III's exiled supporters returned to England. He gains support, he gains an army, and on 4th of August 1265 we find ourselves on Green Hill, just outside the town of Evesham, Worcestershire, in England, ready to face battle. So I'm going to change these models around now, because now we're going to fight the Battle of Evesham. So the Battle of Evesham, bit of a background. Simon de Montfort's son, the younger Simon de Montfort, has actually been defeated at a battle just outside of Kenilworth in the Midlands. Young Simon had made a mistake. Instead of bedding down inside Kenilworth Castle, he decided to be out there on the lovely fields outside of the priory. And Lord Edward surprised him and gave him a sound thrashing. Now Simon de Montfort Sr. expected his young son to bring the rest of the army down to Evesham and actually trap the king's army here between them. But young Simon isn't coming. So Simon de Montfort himself, as he's approaching the top of Green Hill, he can see that the king's army outnumbers him at least 3-1. And the king's army is formed up in 3 divisions. You have Gilbert de Clare on the king's left flank, or it's Edward's army really. De Clare has changed sides, as he did, if I understand, several times during this war. But he's fallen out with Simon de Montfort, and he's now on the king's side. On the right side here, we have Roger Mortimer, a staunch king supporter. And in the centre, we have just a mounted division, which originally was set further back. This is Lord Edward, the king's son's division. And from what I understand is Simon de Montfort here, with his little banner, has decided that he's going to go for it. He's formed a wedge, a cuniem, and he's going to charge dead centre and try and smash through this mounted division. So as you can see, I've rearranged the model so I can show you what happens the moment that Simon de Montfort's cuniem, his wedge, plough into Lord Edward's division. As Simon de Montfort charges forward, he leaves behind his infantry. Obviously, he's on horses, he's galloping up the hill. And his infantry can see as he smashes into the king's centre division there, into Lord Edward's horse, that the flanks on either side, Roger Mortimer and Gilbert de Clare, now close in around for the kill. So the infantry, they turn around and run for their lives. These men will be caught and butchered in the streets of Evesham or drowned in the River Avon. There is a small group of foot soldiers belonging to the rebel army, some knights and some foot soldiers. These apparently fight on till the bitter end. But what happens in the middle of the battle? As you can imagine, there is carnage. What happens is we have Roger Mortimer's division, which is on the right, wheel round to attack the mounted cavalry of Simon de Montfort in their left flank, and likewise Gilbert de Clare, who has changed sides, he is now smashing in to the right flank of the rebels. I've added the king here, Henry III. He was put into borrowed armour of the time and actually dragged along with Simon de Montfort's forces. Now, as rebel cavalry come around, the king, who apparently was on foot at this stage, is attacked and wounded in the shoulder. And he's crying out, "I am Henry of Winchester. I am your king. Don't kill me." And somebody knocked off his helmet to have a look, and they saw there it was the old man. And he was recognised and led off the field back into Evesham for some medical attention. They reckon there was between 4,000 and 6,000 dead on the Battle of Evesham, but there are varying numbers. So why is it called the murder of Evesham? Well, rumour has it, and there is a little bit of evidence for this, that the Royalist army under Lord Edward put together a murder squad of 12 knights. Their job was simply, in the clash of battle, to kill Simon de Montfort and his close associates. Apparently, Gilbert de Clare and Lord Edward had been heard to say that if they captured Simon de Montfort and his associates and his sons, they would simply put them to death. Now, we do know that in the very early clash of the battle, that Roger de Mortimer put a lance straight through the neck of Simon de Montfort, killing him. But that was just shortly after Simon had witnessed his son, his youngest son, Henry, being cleaved in two with a sword. And the Seneschal of the Tower of London, that's the Baron in charge of the Tower of London, Hugh Despenser, was killed with a dagger right next to Simon de Montfort. So, Simon de Montfort's body, riddled in wounds, was stripped of his armour, and then he was decapitated. His hands were severed from below the elbow, and his feet from below the knees. Then he was castrated. His genitalia were placed either side of the nose and then shoved into his mouth. The head, together with the genitalia, were sent to Lady Mortimer, because being the wife of Sir Roger Mortimer, they were mortal enemies of Simon de Montfort. Apparently when she saw the head, she dismissed it. Now the other parts of the body, the hands and the feet, were sent to different parts of England. The body itself, though, was buried at Evesham Abbey. That's the trunk. And there's a bit of a problem, because it becomes a pilgrimage site. And it was forbidden to actually do that. The one thing they didn't want, and it was outlawed, was to venerate Simon de Montfort as a saint. So to sum up, the devastation caused by Edward's army at Evesham was so great that a contemporary of Edward, a historian, Robert of Gloucester, he describes it as a murder of Evesham. For battle, it was none. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, have a look at our Patreon community. The link is in the description. Now, before I go, I'd like to shout out to some of our Patreon members. Now, Miss Bobby, hi. I met her on one of our Google Hangouts. That was pretty good. She's invited me to shoot on her range down in British Columbia. Looking forward to that. We have PC Brummy. Now, I'm a Brummy from Birmingham, so hey, buddy. And Haley L. Amrani. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So, folks, bye for now.